We begin this hour with the tragedy in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Just before 5 p.m. local time yesterday, a gunman opened fire at St. Francis Hospital, killing 4. As many as 10 people were also injured in the chaos. Police say they arrived on the scene within 3 minutes when they heard gunfire on the second floor and raced to confront the shooter. He was found dead in a stairwell after apparently taking his own life. Now investigators are searching for a motive as the community reels from an all too familiar episode of gun violence in the United States. NBC News correspondent Blaine Alexander has more.
Well, it happened on the second floor of a medical building here on the campus of St. Francis Hospital. Now, police are still investigating this entire event, but they say that the shooting was not random. They say that the gunman walked into that building and onto that floor with a specific target in mind. A place of healing is now the latest scene of yet another mass shooting.
There is an active shooter inside of the Nato building.
Police say a gunman walked into this medical facility on the campus of St. Francis Hospital in Tulsa, Oklahoma, armed with a rifle and a handgun, killing 4 people before officials say he turned the gun on himself as officers closed in.
We had shot fire inside the building. We're going to make entry.
It happened late Wednesday. Officials have not publicly identified the shooter, but say he is between 35 and 40 years old. The first call came in at 4:52 p.m.
They're running in.
Officers arrived on the scene within minutes.
It appears as though the whole thing was a 4-minute or so time span from the time it came in till the time officers made contact.
Now, police are working to determine a motive.
The shooter was not just randomly shooting at people in a hospital. He went to this particular location with purpose. He went to this floor with purpose. He went to this office with purpose.
Nearly 50 miles away in Muskogee, Oklahoma, a bomb squad searches the home they say belonged to the shooter. Officers there ordering neighbors to shelter in place. Meanwhile, outside the hospital, for family and friends, an agonizing wait to learn any news about their loved ones.
I was at work and then he messaged me saying there's an active shooter, shots have been fired, and that was all.
This marks the 3rd major mass shooting in less than 3 weeks, coming on the heels of deadly attacks in Buffalo, New York, and Uvalde, Texas. Overnight, Oklahoma's governor praised officers in the face of what he calls a senseless act of violence.
The citizens of Tulsa, I think, should be proud. I cannot overstate how proud I am of the area response to this incident.
Now we understand that the second floor of that building houses an orthopedic office. Officials tell us that that was at least part of the crime scene. Back to you.
Blaine Alexander, thank you so much. The school police chief at the center of the investigation into the Texas elementary school shooting has broken his silence and is now speaking out. This comes as more funerals are planned today for the victims. NBC News correspondent Morgan Chesky has the latest from Uvalde.
With questions mounting about the police response to the worst school shooting in a decade. Uvalde School Police Chief Pete Arredondo on CNN says he is talking with investigators, contradicting state officials who say he has not responded to Texas Rangers' request for a follow-up interview.
We've been in contact with DPS every day, just so you all know.
They say that you're not cooperating.
I've been on the phone with them every day.
Authorities say Arredondo was the incident commander at Robb Elementary, who chose to have officers wait and not engage the gunman. The Texas Law Enforcement Union is urging members to cooperate fully after a great deal of false and misleading information, some from the very highest levels of government and law enforcement. Uvalde is in mourning today as family and friends say goodbye to their loved ones. On Wednesday, funeral processions for 10-year-old Jose Flores Jr. and teacher Irma Garcia laid to rest alongside her husband, Joe, who died while preparing for her funeral.
Right now, this community is going to need healing and lots of love and lots of prayer.
In Washington, pressure is building on lawmakers to find common ground on guns, with the House Judiciary Committee expected to vote today on a package of reforms that would include raising the age for buying semi-automatic rifles from 18 to 21 years old. Even if the package passes the House, it's almost certain to fail in the Senate. While a bipartisan group of senators is discussing proposals, including expanded background checks. The Senate Republican leader is rejecting any new gun restrictions.
And it seems to me there are 2 broad categories that underscore the problem: mental illness and school safety.
President Biden asked if he's confident Congress will take action.
I served in Congress for 36 years. I'm never confident. Totally.
Morgan Chesky, NBC News, Uvalde, Texas.
Now to the verdict in the Johnny Depp defamation trial against his ex-wife, Amber Heard. Depp was awarded $15 million in damages after a jury ruled in his favor, saying Heard defamed him in a 2018 Washington Post op-ed in which she called herself a public figure representing domestic abuse. NBC News national correspondent Miguel Almaguer has more from the courthouse in Fairfax, Virginia.
While this case is likely headed towards appeal, Johnny Depp was given a sweeping victory here at the courthouse in Virginia, the jury saying he was defamed by his ex-wife.
In a verdict as stunning as the trial, the jury delivering an overwhelming victory for Johnny Depp.
Do you find that Mr. Depp has proven all the elements of defamation? Answer, yes.
Depp, who was said to be watching from the UK, awarded $15 million after the jury unanimously agreed he was defamed by ex-wife Amber Heard when she wrote a 2018 op-ed in the Washington Post saying she was a public figure representing domestic abuse without mentioning Depp by name.
Today's verdict confirms what we have said from the beginning, that the claims against Johnny Depp are defamatory and unsupported by any evidence.
With Depp's supporters celebrating outside the courthouse, inside the jury rendering a mixed verdict, agreeing Heard was also defamed after one of Depp's attorneys called her accusations a hoax, awarding her $2 million. After the blistering defeat, Heard saying in part, "I'm even more disappointed with what this verdict means for other women. It is a setback." A star-studded but toxic marriage fueled by drugs and alcohol and claims of mental, verbal, and physical abuse.
He just hit me over and over and over again.
But the verdict suggests the jury did not believe Heard's accusations of abuse.
But never did I myself reach the point of striking Ms. Heard in any way.
The trial pulling back the curtain on a Hollywood marriage with embarrassing details and photographic evidence.
Yes or no?
The case and its billions of views going viral, with Depp appearing to win in the court of public opinion. The end of a trial, but perhaps not a Hollywood ending.
Because there is a cap on punitive damages here in the state of Virginia, Johnny Depp will not be awarded that $15 million he was given by the jury. Instead, $10.4 million, at least for now. Back to you.
Miguel Almaguer, thank you. For more on this story, we want to bring you NBC News youth and internet culture reporter Callan Rosenblatt. Callan, good morning. This case has turned into a bit of a circus, but it really took on a life of its own online, with many people lashing out at actress Amber Heard. So can you just take us through what you've seen in the aftermath of the verdict?
Yeah, it's been just as crazy in the aftermath as it was prior to the verdict. We are seeing on both sides of the aisle people celebrating this case, the hashtag Justice for Johnny Depp, which has been a huge rallying cry for Johnny Depp throughout this entire case, immediately trending as the verdict was read. Things like Captain Jack Sparrow trending immediately. A name making fun of Amber Heard also trending immediately. And on the flip side of that, you see a lot of people saying, well, I'm going to take a break now from social media because I don't want to be involved in this type of rhetoric around domestic violence victims for the foreseeable future.
And Callan, I know that after the verdict and even during this trial, many people and survivors and advocates have expressed concern that this could have a chilling effect on abuse survivors coming forward. What are you hearing online? What are these survivors saying about this?
Well, some survivors are very much in Johnny Depp's camp. They very much feel that this is a victory by proxy for them as well. However, there are many, many domestic violence survivors out there who say this sets a dangerous precedent. The term I keep seeing over and over and over again is this sets a dangerous precedent, which echoes what Miguel mentioned about the statement that Amber Heard put out, saying that this is a setback for women and for domestic violence survivors. We're seeing a lot of that echoed on social media, a lot of people saying that, you know, they're concerned that this essentially says you cannot speak out against your abuser if you're a domestic violence survivor. and just seeing a lot of fear around that concept that can domestic violence survivors speak out against their abuser without the fear of defamation? Will people try to replicate this case? That's a lot of the conversation we're seeing right now.
And of course, beyond the jury decision itself, what are survivors saying about the chaos that just surrounded the trial as a whole? We saw memes, we saw just lots of public discourse that at times was a bit problematic.
Absolutely, very problematic. And a lot of survivors and non-survivors saying, you know, is this how we treat someone who has been, or is accusing someone rather, of being abusive? I mean, in a post-Me Too world, is this how we want to behave when someone brings forward allegations? And, you know, people feel that maybe this case actually did take us back a few steps in the way that we talk about domestic violence. We're making jokes about domestic violence. We're seeing memes that are maligning Amber Heard, even people cosplaying as Amber Heard with made-up bruises on their faces. I mean, it's just taken it to a sort of dark place, and people are just questioning, is this the kind of society and the kind of world that we want to build, and are we taking a few steps back after the verdict?
Of course, this has been a trial to watch and follow, but also we'll have to continue to follow what the impacts will be moving forward. Callan Rosenblatt, thank you so much. Now to the war in Ukraine and some critical support on the way for the Ukrainian military. President Biden announced a new military aid package, which includes those advanced rocket launchers the Ukrainians have been seeking in their fight against Russia. Let's bring in Joe Cirincione for more on the latest from Ukraine. He's a distinguished fellow at the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. Joe, good morning. Do you think these weapons could help the Ukrainians turn the tide in the eastern part of the country, which has been pretty contentious at this point, or is this help coming way too late?
It'll take about 3 weeks for these rocket systems to reach the front lines, but once they get there, yes, they can make a decisive difference. This is the MLRS, the Multiple Launch Rocket System. It comes with a variety of different rockets of different ranges, ranging from 20 miles to almost 200 miles. The administration is giving the Ukrainians rockets that can travel about 45 miles. That can outrange all the Russian artillery, meaning that the Ukrainians can deploy this in relative safety and pound counterfire against the Russian artillery that is now devastating their cities. The administration hesitated to give them the most advanced system, the one that would go 180 miles, because they're afraid that that might be used to strike targets inside Russia, and they don't want that kind of escalation.
And Joe, you've talked about the military impact, but I want to switch gears and discuss the impact the war is having on the supply of wheat around the world. Ukraine is actually one of the world's largest exporters of what's a pretty important commodity, but Russia's blockade in the Black Sea has prevented Ukraine from shipping wheat to the rest of Europe. The issue has actually gotten so bad that the Pope spoke out about it just yesterday. He said grain, quote, cannot be used as a weapon of war. What do you make of all of this? And can the U.S. do anything to solve what may become a food crisis?
Well, the Russians are definitely using their food blockade as a weapon of war. They're impacting not just Ukraine, preventing them from getting their grains out of the country, but most of the world, which are heavily dependent on Ukrainian food products. Ukraine for centuries has been the grain basket of the world. It's responsible not just for grain and corn, but, for example, sunflower, the national flower of Ukraine. Ukraine exports 50% of the world's sunflower oil, an essential cooking ingredient. Sorry, you know, if about half of the bread made in sub-Saharan Africa uses Ukrainian grain, you block that grain, you're talking about starvation in Africa. That's why you're hearing the Pope speak out. That's why you're hearing increasing talk among NATO officials about using military force to break the Russian food blockade. A very dangerous but perhaps necessary mission coming in the next few weeks or months.
And Joe, you've broken down the military efforts for us and the agricultural impact. So now let's talk diplomatic efforts. I know that NATO Secretary Jens Stoltenberg is meeting with President Biden at the White House today. How significant is this meeting? And could we hear an update on the status of Finland and Sweden joining NATO?
Absolutely. One of the most important things that the Biden administration has done is preserve the unity of the NATO alliance and, in fact, to grow the NATO alliance. And this has led not just to uniform and coordinated military supplies to Ukraine, but economic impacts. For example, the recent end to imports of Russian oil by sea of Europe. This is absolutely vital, and Biden has been superb at this. The question is, can he maintain this as the war drags on, as the economic impact grows greater on the European countries? You see some NATO countries like Italy putting forth peace plans that they hope the administration will embrace. This is the kind of discussion we expect at the White House today.
Joe Cirincione, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now back to the U.S. Let's get a check at your morning news now. Weather. Michelle Grossman joins us now. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, Zinclay. We're watching showers and storms. Hope you brought the umbrella today.
I did not, but I will listen.
Okay. Yeah, you're going to need it because we're looking at showers and storms stretching from the mid-Atlantic all the way down to the parts of the south central states. And we could see embedded thunderstorms as well. Now, notice back behind this front, below average temperatures. This is going to sweep through. It's going to sweep out those summer-like temperatures we've been feeling from the mid-Atlantic down south. Also looking at some later showers in the northwest. So let's talk about the temperatures first. Here's that jet stream dip so far to the south. That's allowing that cold Canadian air to come in. That's why we're below average here. Then ahead of this front, we're looking at warm conditions, summer-like conditions still in the 90s. We've had 5 days, maybe even 7, including the weekend of 80s and 90s. So D.C., you're 9 degrees above what is average for this time of year. You're at 90 today, 95 in Raleigh, 94 in Wilmington, Columbia 97, and 95 degrees in Savannah. Then as we go throughout tomorrow, that cold front sweeps through. That refreshing air comes in. It's going to be drier. It wipes out the humidity as well. So notice, D.C., you're 2 degrees below what is typical for this time of year. So finally getting that relief. Only in the 70s in Rochester, Cleveland, Cincinnati, back to Minneapolis, and also Chicago. We're going to return to warmth a bit. It's not going to get quite as hot, but it's going to get warmer as we head towards Monday in Philadelphia, back into the 80s, back into the 80s in Richmond, and back into the 80s in Pittsburgh. Now, the heat today is going to spark some storms. We're looking at the chance for rounds of storms. Some could be on the severe side. That would mainly be in the mid-Atlantic. So today, that cold front moves towards the East Coast. That's going to bring the chance for severe storms. We're talking gusty winds, damaging winds, some hail, even the chance of a tornado or two. That's mainly in the mid-Atlantic. And then we're looking at a stormy start right now. So if you don't have your umbrella, you want to keep the eye to the sky, because as you head out today, we are looking at some scattered showers, not a washout in many spots, but still, if we do have those embedded thunderstorms, we could see some torrential downpours. And that's mainly in the mid-Atlantic. 18 million people at risk with winds gusting to 60 miles per hour. We're also watching the tropics right on cue. It started yesterday. Was that June 1st?
Yes.
So yeah, I forget already. We're looking at a likely tropical depression to form over the next 2 days. And then really what the takeaway from this is, whether it becomes a depression, whether it becomes a storm, we're looking at a lot of rainfall in central and southern Florida, up to 8 inches possible, especially where you see the red and the orange. So West Palm Beach, Miami, it's going to be a wet Friday. It's going to be wet Saturday as well. Here's your weekend forecast. A tropical downpour in parts of Florida, with also some rain in the southeast, a few storms in the south central states, some showers in the northwest. And we're looking at showers and clouds in the Pacific Northwest into the Intermountain West on Saturday. Still really wet on Saturday. We start to dry it out in Florida on Sunday. A really nice day, though, in the mid-Atlantic into the Northeast and New England on Sunday.
Okay, I'll take a nice day.
Yeah.
Rain on the weekend.
I know.
But
I love it. Movies, couch. You don't feel guilty, right? A mood.
But also have your umbrella.
Yeah, exactly. I'll let you borrow mine.
Thank you. Thank you, Michelle Grossman. Thanks so much. Welcome back. The celebrations are underway for Queen Elizabeth's Platinum Jubilee, honoring the 70 years Her Majesty has sat on the throne. Thousands are gathered across London to pay tribute to the monarch, who is leading the Jubilee with help of her son, Prince Charles. Queen Elizabeth is the longest-serving monarch of any British or female sovereign. NBC News foreign correspondent Megan Fitzgerald joins us now from London with a recap of today's events, which are still ongoing. Megan, good morning. Walk us through what we've seen so far. What have been some of the big moments this morning during this huge Jubilee?
Yeah, Zinclay, good morning to you. You know, it's certainly been an extraordinary moment, a really incredible display of pageantry and tradition here in London. The morning kicked off, of course, the kickoff of the Jubilee with the trooping the colors. This is a historic event that marks the Queen's birthday. So a parade, you could say, that was really incredible. As you mentioned, the thousands of people lining the streets leading up to Buckingham Palace as they looked on as the troops walked past them. But most notably, of course, senior members of the royal family. We saw the Duchess of Cambridge and her children, as well as the Duchess of Cornwall in a horse-drawn carriage as they rolled past. But the biggest moment this morning, of course, was when Queen Elizabeth walked out onto the balcony and the crowd just erupted with excitement to see her, to get that glimpse, what so many people have been waiting for. And then not long after that, we saw the Royal Flypast, where some 70 aircraft, historic aircraft as well as modern, flew over Buckingham Palace. It was certainly a sight to see. The Queen, of course, on the balcony once again with members of the working royal family, notably absent, of course, who weren't invited to stand alongside her, Prince Harry, Meghan Markle, as well as Prince Andrew. Later on today, we are expecting to see the Queen once more in Windsor, where she will participate in the lighting of the beacons. We know that thousands of beacons are going to be lit in her honor in celebration of the Queen throughout the country as this celebration continues. And Clay.
And Megan, we know the monarchy has a complicated legacy. How are people in attendance responding to today's celebrations? I know we've seen those huge crowds. What are you hearing on the ground?
Well, it's a good point. And the Queen is well aware of the importance of these next 4 days because there is some decline in the relevancy of the royal family. People questioning its relevancy now. And the popularity of her successor, her son, Prince Charles. And so these 4 days are critically important to the royal family to remind this country of the rich tradition that they have and the pride, to restore the pride and what comes along with this royal family. But we have been speaking with people who are just so excited to be here. I mean, this is a historic event. I mean, this is the longest reigning monarch in the country's history. Marking 70 years reigning over this country at 96 years old. So there certainly is a lot of excitement. We know that there's going to be parties throughout the country, certainly on Sunday, which is going to be the Jubilee luncheon. Neighbors are going to get together with each other and celebrate this amazing occasion. So a lot of happiness, to say the least, here. And that's certainly what the Queen has said. She has selflessly said that what she wants these 4 days to capture are happy moments for people. No doubt about it, that's already happening.
Definitely a major milestone, and I know the Queen is celebrating this accomplishment with a new royal portrait. What do we know about this commissioned piece, and how does it compare to past portraits?
So we know that the palace just released that portrait yesterday, and we saw today the Queen wearing that beautiful baby blue coat that she wore in that portrait. Now, how this differs from years past is other Jubilees, we've seen the Queen with a sash. We've seen her with a crown. This portrait, a bit different, perhaps a bit more relaxed, sitting there with certainly a smile, certainly not a full smile, but this is definitely noticeably different than past years. And it's hard to speculate, and you can't really speculate, but it is interesting that we know that she's sort of preparing and positioning her son, Prince Charles, who will then, of course, take over, hopefully in years to come when the Queen does pass away. But it's certainly interesting to see her there without a crown, Sinclair.
Of course, and also to see her without her husband, right? There's a lot to follow and a lot of change. Megan Fitzgerald, thank you so much. Now, let's bring in Vanity Fair staff writer Erin Vanderhoof for more. Erin, good morning. The festivities are not over for today. Tree of Trees beacon will be lit up outside the palace tonight. So walk us through the significance of this tradition. And are other beacons lit up along with it? Break it down.
So there are thousands of beacons across the UK that are going to be lit. The Queen is going to be participating, we think, from Windsor Castle. That's the plan. But essentially, the point of the entire Jubilee, and the Queen actually said it in the Silver Jubilee back in 1977, that it's about emphasizing the union and the benefits of union among the United Kingdoms. And so all throughout the weekend, you're going to be seeing you have a main concert that's happening in London, but there's going to be an auxiliary concert across the country. Kate and William are going to Wales to see to see a concert at Cardiff Castle. And you're just going to be seeing the family emphasizing the union of all of the different parts of the United Kingdom over the weekend.
And Aaron, we're seeing images of lots of crowds, and this is interesting given the years of social distancing we've been doing. The UK has struggled to fight COVID since this pandemic began, and this is the first time Britain is holding such a large event in 2 years. So what is the mood among the British, and what does this moment mean for them?
Well, I think especially after a year where the Queen has, she had COVID in February, she suffered a back injury last fall that's led to ongoing mobility issues. And especially since the loss of her husband, she's really toned back her public engagements. And so, this is one opportunity for her to get back out there. But at the same time, she has, in every step of the way, been thinking about passing the torch on. And so as much as this is a weekend honoring her legendary reign, we're going to see Charles and Camilla out with people on Sunday, as luncheons take place across the country. We're going to be seeing other members of the family, this morning on the balcony, the Cambridge children. We've got Prince Louis, Prince George, and Princess Charlotte. Prince Louis stole the show, making great faces. I think that you're seeing the way that the Queen is emphasizing her role as a grandmother and passing the torch on to everybody else.
And I'm glad you mentioned passing the torch, because we did see Prince Charles inspect the guardsmen and take their salute in his mother's place. And this has not happened since the Queen took the throne. So can we expect to see him stand in for his mother more for the rest of the weekend as the festivities continue?
Well, so actually the palace has declined to share the Queen's schedule until the day of. So the Queen, it's really, really important to her that she doesn't let people down. And so ever since, her husband passed away, since the pandemic, you've been seeing her do more. Occasionally she'll show up at events where other people are scheduled to be there too. That's what you saw at you saw that last week at a London Underground event. But yes, in general, the idea is that more and more, she's never going to abdicate, but more and more, some of the more physically challenging activities, like, this time she didn't ride in a carriage just because with her mobility issues, it's just not, it wasn't particularly feasible. But as much as she can, she's still, she's got a lot of confidence in Charles. She's got a lot of confidence in Camilla. And so as much as her limitations are inspired by health challenges, you can tell that she wants everybody to know that she's ready. She thinks that they are ready to do those duties.
Important analysis. Erin Vanderhoof, thank you so much.
Thank you, Zinlei.
And with 70 years on the throne, Queen Elizabeth is the only monarch most of the United Kingdom has ever known. But in recent years, the new generation of royals is stepping up and giving the world a glimpse of what's to come. NBC News correspondent Stephanie Gosk joins us now from Buckingham Palace. Good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning, Zinke. The Queen once famously said, "I have to be seen to be believed." And really what she was talking about is seen in public. But it's not just about her being seen in public. It is also about the family being seen, because it is the line of succession. And we saw that here today multiple times. And as you have pointed out, because of her illness, it has been happening more and more.
Future King of England, stepping in for his mother, the Queen. Prince Charles inspecting troops and taking the royal salute for the first time at the Horse Guards Parade in place of Queen Elizabeth. Prince William and Princess Anne following behind for trooping the color, honoring tradition while also presenting the future of the monarchy. The Queen's fewer public appearances in recent years have made way for other family members to take on greater public roles.
My lords and members of the House of Commons.
Prince Charles, the longest heir in history, opening Parliament on her behalf last month.
Her Majesty's government's priority is to grow and strengthen the economy.
The Prince of Wales learning from his mother his entire life, looking on as a young boy as she was crowned.
4-year-old Prince Charles watched in wonderment, mixed with just a bit of boyish energy.
The Queen's grandchildren have also increasingly stood in for the monarch. Prince William and Kate carrying out engagements both at home and abroad.
William is very like the Queen. He's got her sense of kind of calmness and composure.
The sovereign's dedication and love of her country serving as an inspiration to the couple.
It's been a real sort of guiding example of just what sort of a good monarch can be.
While Prince Harry and Meghan are no longer working royals, Harry still shares a special bond with the Queen. Harry saying this about his grandmother, Tahoda, in April.
What's the best thing about her?
To be honest with you, it's her sense of humour and her ability to see the humour in so many different things. We have a really special relationship. We talk about things that she can't talk about with anybody else.
The leader of her country and a large family who has made clear they will carry out her legacy for generations to come. We did not see Prince Harry and Meghan on the balcony because the balcony was for working royals only, but they are here with Lilibet and Archie, and Lilibet has not met the Queen, her namesake. That's going to be happening in the coming days. Zincle?
Hopefully we'll get some pictures from that too. Stephanie Gosk, thank you so much. Let's talk pandemic. This morning, one of the strictest COVID lockdowns in the world has been lifted. Shanghai, one of China's largest cities, is coming back to life. But residents are still subject to an intense test and trace policy. NBC News foreign correspondent Janice Mackey-Frayer is in China with more on the reopening.
Across Shanghai, there were celebrations, reunions, selfies, and relief. The city of 25 million brought to a standstill, now springing back to life.
一样的，我现在恨不得我扑到这个黄浦江里边，然后去扑腾两下，太激动了。
The easing of a 2-month lockdown, one of the toughest anywhere, triggered joyful traffic jams here and saw people strolling the streets because they could.
I'm taking a bike ride and going to check and see if I can enter the supermarket.
Anna Catalina, an American student, hadn't been outside since late March. Streets and parks that had been empty are alive again, and crowds acting like curious tourists returned to the famous waterfront, the Bund.
When I saw those pictures, I actually had a little tears in my eyes. I got a little bit emotional. I just realized that I kind of missed this place.
While Shanghai's lockdown is mostly over and the fear of one is easing in Beijing, China's tough zero-COVID policy is here to stay. It means a near daily ritual of mass testing. Here in Beijing, a negative test report is needed every 48 hours to get into an office building or park, even a convenience store. Officials are also using big data to trace and quarantine every close contact of every COVID case.
Under zero COVID, hospitals like this that were built as temporary places for COVID patients are now a permanent part of the landscape.
Cases have stayed relatively low here, but the cost of zero COVID is rising. China's economy is suffering slow growth, unemployment, and a plunge in housing sales. And in Shanghai, people may not easily forget. After public anger over shortages of food and medicine, conditions at mass quarantine centers, and the threat of family separation, much of it boiled over onto social media, keeping government censors busy. Authorities have ordered state media to avoid even using the phrase lifting lockdown. So during a live interview, when this elderly woman said, "From the day I was born, I didn't experience anything like this," a reporter actually moved the microphone away, just as she added, being locked down at home, it was a big joke. Janice Mackey-Frayer, NBC News, Beijing.
Big developments out of Shanghai, so let's bring in NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel for more on this. Dr. Patel, good morning. What do you make of these lockdowns being lifted in Shanghai? Do you think China's zero COVID policy worked in keeping a low case count there, especially given what we're hearing from people on the ground?
Yeah, I think, look, I think any time you have something that's so extreme and severe, you start to see both the benefits and incredible risks. And I think that's what you saw here with the China COVID zero policy, because it's just the detrimental effects globally, but then also just to the people, as you point out in that clip, we heard just people who were frustrated and overjoyed because of the release. And here's the cases, 20,000 daily cases in Shanghai alone in April, reduced to 15. On the surface, that looked like a success, but we know that came at an extreme price to the population. So it's not something I would recommend globally. But did it work to suppress COVID cases? Yes. Did it need to be so extreme? No.
And doctor, while China's situation might be improving, the WHO is now saying that North Korea's COVID policy is COVID outbreak is getting worse. The WHO also said it's hard to provide accurate analysis because the North Korean because North Korea is withholding crucial data on the spread of the virus. How dangerous is it for a country to be so secretive with its COVID reporting, especially when we've seen so many new variants emerge and spreading across countries?
Yeah, this, I cannot emphasize enough how disturbing it is to hear an entire country. And all I have to do is rewind my magic time machine to January of 2020, when we were hearing reports that actually there were cases more than reported in the Wuhan and outside of the Wuhan province in China. Sure enough, we even found out that there was cases in the United States that we didn't pick up because we didn't really understand that we needed to do that type of surveillance. So you're spot on. We need to have global cooperation, and that means we need to put the politics aside and put the public health first, because this is not a one country pandemic, as we know very well.
And finally, Dr. Patel, given where we are right now with infections and hospitalizations creeping up across the country in the U.S., are you optimistic that we're going to be able to get through the summer without another surge in cases? I heard you say putting public health over politics. Do you think we can do that?
Yeah, I'm here because I hope we can, but let me put the numbers into context. We're over 100,000 reported cases a day. I say reported because with at-home antigen testing, we know that is a fraction, maybe even kind of a third of what's actually happening, because there's so many people that test at home and they isolate and they don't tell anyone. So over 100,000 cases a day, that puts us in like the second largest surge just by cases alone. Hospitalizations, luckily, are not as high as they would have been if we had more unvaccinated people, and we got a lot of protection from the last Omicron surge. But I do think that this is going to be a summer where we're seeing parts of the West, parts of the Southeast already rising in numbers, and there will be hospitalizations and deaths, unfortunately. It will not be like last year's Delta surge in terms of deaths and hospitalizations, but I do worry that we're going to need to have everything ready for what we all feel is going to be a rough fall. So if we're in the second largest surge now, and I think that something could be worse in the fall, we need to make sure people are vaccinated, boosted. I also recommend people just think about who they're around. And if there's someone immunocompromised, if they don't want to get sick for any reason, wear a mask. That's the best thing we can do.
Right. Prevention is key because we're still in a pandemic. Yeah. Dr. Kavita Patel, thank you so much. Now, with a shakeup in the leadership at Facebook parent company Meta, Sheryl Sandberg announced she will step down from her role as chief operating officer in the fall. Sandberg joined Facebook in 2008 as the #2 to Facebook CEO and co-founder Mark Zuckerberg, helping to shape it into a powerhouse in the tech industry. Sandberg says she will now focus more on her philanthropic work, and she will continue to serve on Meta's board of directors. Javier Olivan, the company's chief growth officer, will take over as chief operating officer after Sandberg's departure. Now to climate control, our weekly series on environmental issues and smart solutions. We begin with hydrogen. It's being heralded as a miracle fuel capable of powering cars and planes and factories without carbon emissions. But as NBC News meteorologist Bill Cairns explains, the solution is not quite airtight.
We start today's climate control with a warning from scientists about the so-called hydrogen miracle fuel that some say is our answer to eliminating our addiction to fossil fuels. Well, hydrogen is a clean fuel that when used in a fuel cell, it produces only water. Currently, hydrogen is primarily used in industry, but technology has been proven for use in cars, houses, planes, and power generation. So why isn't everyone using hydrogen already? Well, there's no infrastructure. We do not have a system to produce and deliver hydrogen to people where they need it. The recent infrastructure bill allocates $8 billion to create at least 4 regional hydrogen hubs here in our country. The goal is to prove hydrogen's viability. But nothing is this easy in the climate fight. Hydrogen is clean if contained, but any leaks in production or delivery allow hydrogen to increase the amount of fossil fuels we are trying to get rid of in our atmosphere. Hydrogen is so small it's hard to contain, and it easily leaks. Now, the Hydrogen Council reports over 350 new hydrogen projects worth, listen to this, $500 billion worldwide. Well, now to a debate within our country and many other nations. The question, whether or not the climate crisis is actually a climate emergency. This week, the Pacific island nation of Vanuatu declared a climate emergency. The low-lying island is especially susceptible to sea level rise and tropical cyclones. They joined a growing list of nations declaring a climate emergency. This includes the United Kingdom, Ireland, Canada, France, Argentina, Spain, Italy, South Korea, Japan, and even the Vatican City. Our country is noticeably missing on that list. A group of Democratic senators wanted President Biden to declare a climate emergency in his inauguration speech, but he did not. Now, with little of his climate campaign pledges accomplished so far, there is growing pressure for the president to declare a climate emergency before the midterm elections. Polling showed climate change was the third most important issue to Democratic voters in the 2020 election. Well, we end our climate tour by going back to the future.
Are you telling me that you built a time machine out of a DeLorean?
Almost every 80s kid grew up wanting the car with wings, a DeLorean. Now your dreams can come true in an all-new and all-electric DeLorean. These are the first views of the Alpha 5 EV. It comes with a 100-kilowatt battery with an estimated driving range, pretty impressive, 300 miles. And just like the movie, it is fast. 0 to 60 in 3 seconds with a maximum speed of 155 miles per hour. And in case you're wondering, just like the movie, it can reach 88 miles per hour in no problem at all, less than 4 seconds. So far, no word on that sticker price. The company plans to show off the car in public for the first time this August.
All right, Justin Bieber fans, brace yourselves. Nope, not for a new music album or music video, but this time for a fresh cup of cold brew. Bieber has partnered with iconic Canadian coffee chain Tim Hortons to release Bieb's Brew, a French vanilla cold brew coffee inspired by his sweet tooth. Back in November, the two collaborated on a line of the brand's famous donut holes that featured 3 new flavors. And do not worry, the limited edition Timbits, as they're called, will also be back and ready to pair with your cup of Bieb's Brew, yes, the coffee, starting June 6th across the U.S. and Canada. It's worth noting the Canadian-born singer says he grew up on Tim Hortons, and the collaboration was always a dream of his. So that's some coffee we can check out this morning. But now for a bit of light after a week of tragedy in Texas. Resources and aid have steadily flowed into Uvalde in the days since last week's attack. But one group is providing a much-needed service that's unmatched. Lutheran Church Charities Comfort Dogs have been deployed to Uvalde to bring healing, support, and lots of snuggles to victims, their families, and first responders in their time of need. Janice Marut, Lutheran Church Charities Southwest Regional Director, joins us now from Uvalde. Good morning. Thank you for being here. So you sent 8 golden retrievers to Uvalde last week from various parts of Texas, Oklahoma, and Colorado, and you've just sent a second wave of dogs. It's only been a week since the tragedy. How is your team approaching this particular assignment, given how heavy it is, and what kind of support can your dogs provide to the victims and first responders?
Well, our job is to just be present with our dogs, to provide a calm and quiet atmosphere for people who are grieving and in need. We receive support from one another as a group, as a team working together. But our objective is to be present to help in any way that we can.
And how do you train and prepare these dogs and their handlers, especially for assignments so difficult like this one, where we saw 21 lives lost in a community just so deeply grieving?
The training for the dogs is quite amazing. They began at an early age, about 8 weeks, and train for about 2,000 hours before they're placed in Lutheran churches throughout the United States. The handlers also go through intensive training as they receive the dog into their congregation, but the training really never stops. We work with the dogs daily to make sure that both handlers and dogs maintain their training.
And we've talked about the fact that 27 school shootings have taken place in the U.S. so far just this year alone. I imagine it's impacted demand for your services. What have you seen for your dogs over the years when it comes to need?
It has. Whenever we're invited to follow a tragedy or a situation, we try to get there within 24 hours to begin to minister to the community. And it just continues.
And I'd love to know, how can people donate to help support your project, especially now?
You can go to the website www.lutheranchurchcharities.org, and they are the ones who help to supply the travel aid funds for the groups that are coming in to a situation like this.
And Janice, obviously this is somber, but I wonder for you, what got you into this work and what impact have you directly seen it have on people?
Well, I was watching the news one night, happened to be NBC, and saw that dogs had arrived in Sandy Hook, and I didn't know that the Lutheran Church had dogs. So began to follow that idea and tried to figure out what that really meant. Our church became involved in it, and we have 2 dogs, Phoebe and Pax, and our impact in the Texas community as well as beyond has been incredible. Our hearts are filled with the opportunity to serve.
That's so powerful that your work in this began with Sandy Hook and unfortunately is continuing here, but it's clearly impactful. Janice Marut, thank you so much.
Thank you, Zinkley.
Well, that does it for this hour of Morning News Now. We're going to leave you with some of the biggest moments from the Queen's Jubilee, which is still ongoing. The news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.